Are you yearning to wake up each morning and ignite a new meaning and purpose in life and beyond? Welcome, everyone. I'm Michael McGinnis, an award-winning author, speaker, and educator on human potential, and your host on You Can Do It, Inspiring Growth, Igniting Potential. Life presents us with challenges that serve as catalysts for growth. The pivotal question is, how do we respond to these challenges? Or better yet, opportunities? Do we adopt a victim mindset or rise to become victors? Our goal here is to guide and inspire you to master the most amazing journey you have, your life. You Can Do It starts now. Hey everyone, Michael McGinnis here with You Can Do It, Inspiring Growth, Igniting Your Potential. We're going to learn together how to become your full potential in the most amazing journey you have, your life. This is your life. Let's make the most of it. In this session, we're going to learn about the importance of developing our beliefs and courage to be able to take risks. Our full potential is that in order to master life, we must learn how to master change. Growth requires change, right? We're not going to be a different person by being the same, so we've got to be able to change. So otherwise we remain stagnant, and change, particularly when it comes to changing ourselves, is a difficult thing to do. And that's what changes and is the difference between people who do this and people don't. It's difficult. It's not an easy thing. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. Part of mastering change is learning how to take leaps of faith, right? There are things that we've got to change. We've not been there. We're venturing into the unknown, into behaviors and ways and mindsets and an approach towards life and attitudes that we've defined. But now, in order to get there, we've got to really change ourselves in order to be able to get there. And that's not an easy thing. It creates a lot of fear. And how do we get through fear? We've got to charge through it. We've got to take ultimately these leaps of faith. And hence, as I talked about last time, there's fortunately all of these, what I refer to as tools for personal growth and self-discovery. And they're shown here in the image. This is just a partial list of the many tools. Great news is many of them are free, easy to access. The tough part is just learning how to use them. Some of them cost money, such as therapy, counseling, sometimes workshops and other things too. But again, it's an investment that if you can make it, you're making it in yourself. The best investment that you can make. So armed with all of this information and the tools that we just reviewed here to reprogram our unhealthy beliefs into more positive ones, we had that conversation about affirmations last time. We had wonderful Candace Wheeler in to be able to talk about how do we really be able to start creating affirmations to support our change. And we say it and we say it and we repeat it until we start believing it. And that's how we start to formulate these new beliefs, is the power of affirmations. Well, let's take a look at really what this element of change is. Now that as we're starting to move forward, ultimately, as shown here, it's going to require that we make some leaps of faith. We're going to enter into new areas, uncharted waters that we've really got to take charge of. We've got to do, right? And it's not something that we can outsource or give to somebody else to do. It's us. And as it says here, its faith is beyond what you see, right? We don't know the results yet. We don't know where it's ultimately going. I never would have forecasted I was here today, right? As I was overcoming my past and the trauma, I never would have guessed 90% of the things that were in my life. So it was a leap of faith in terms of, I know I want to change. And I know I really want to be able to be happier. And yes, ultimately, I really want to be my full potential. This is my life, right? This is the one that I know I have, and I'm going to make the most of it. So faith and beliefs is really what gives us, and the key word here is courage. Courage to be able to leap into the unknown. And as it shows here in the diagram, here's image of somebody making that jump from on the left-hand side, what was known, who you were, who you used to be, who you currently are, except with the fact that you're now making the choice to change. Well, the first thing to fuel that is courage. Courage is an essential ingredient because if we don't have that courage, it's not going to give us the momentum or the motivation to really be able to make that change, to make that leap of faith. Along with it is risk. We're going to be venturing into new areas, new behaviors, new mindsets. And that takes risk along with courage to start being the new person that you want to be. And then letting go. You make that change. I've done it. I am now moving forward. And we learn to let go of the past. All these things are challenging, right? They take work, they take perseverance and effort. And ultimately, they take that sense of faith and beliefs. And what drives it is this vision that we have of ourselves. And that's where we know that up front, right? In my particular case, to love, share, teach, and heal through God's love in my heart. And now I had to define what that meant, and what are all of the parameters? What does that look like? But I had a direction, I had a vision of self. So we're going to take a look and break some of these factors down. And the great news is we've got some great stories that from back when we were kids, we may have been exposed to be able to help to begin to educate us in that way. But along the way, of course, we forget, we get ingrained in life and the challenges of life, and we tend to forget, we lose that momentum, become stagnant, and very often a victim kind of a mindset creeps in, right? And then there's all these unhealthy beliefs, right? And that's part of life until we said we've had enough, all right? And that's what's now going to drive this change. So let's start taking a look, at these elements and find that inspiration to really be able to make that leap of faith. As you recall from my own growth experience, I had to learn many new beliefs to overcome the incredible array of unhealthy beliefs that I had, particularly relating to a low sense of self-esteem and that I'm not worthy. I'll never amount to anything. So let's take a closer look at that first element of courage. Well, here we are. For some of you, and I know I'm dating myself here, but some of you may have been exposed to this or may even recall the classic movie, The Wizard of Oz. Right? Strongly encourage you to view it. Is really awesome in many ways because it really portrayed a lot about life. Well, the example in here is that the lack of courage came from the lion in The Wizard of Oz. And if you remember that experience with Dorothy, Dorothy slapped the lion and the lion started to tear up and cry. And then he started to admit, oh, I don't have any courage. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed of this over here. And yet she herself Dorothy was on this quest to go to the Wizard of Oz, right, in order to be able to return home. And so said the lion will come, maybe the Wizard of Oz can help you, right? And so hence the journey began. He first of all made that decision to take his first leap of faith by being able to admit that he had a challenge. And secondly, to start venturing down the path with a person he had never met before. But he felt through that brief interchange, it made sense. And so petrified, in terms of what was going to happen, they eventually get to Oz, and they went in and had this meeting with this great Oz, and this imagery and things even back then of this entity that was Oz. And he wasn't going to let them off that easy. He said, no, I mean, if you want courage, you've got to go prove it. You've got to go do it. And he gave the lion a task to go and to bring back the broom from the Wicked Witch. Well, in effect, that meant they were going to have to kill the witch. And they knew that she had all these kinds of powers and stuff like that too. And he was petrified. And remember that scene where he was running away? He didn't want anything to do with it. He was so scared, right? Fear creeping up, that he ran down the hallway and jumped out of a window, right? But nevertheless, he persevered. He moved on and then went to do the task. Well, in that task, they confronted the Wicked Witch, right? And there was that point that's when the event had to take place, right? And this is where all that sense of courage really boiled up to a point of which jump or no jump. And that's it. And very often, those are the kinds of things that we experience in life. Well, as we know, and in this story, he did. He went there, he took that task, and then together with the group, they ended up getting the broom, hence killing the witch, and returning to Oz. Well, it was in that return to Oz that they then realized that this thing called Oz, I remember the little dog Toto ran over to the curtain and pulled it up across. And all of a sudden they realized, oh, Oz is really just this human being. Well, what the human being came out, and humbly began to spoke and said, yep, this is me. But nevertheless, in particular case to the lion, it says, you have demonstrated your act of courage. And as a result, he gave him, as shown here, the Medal of Courage. And that was so symbolic that that helped to really portray to the lion himself that he now indeed has courage. And as the person said that was acting as Oz, you had it all along. You just needed to go through this to be able to realize that. And hence, courage is born. So very often courage is really all about the ability to be able to get into a situation to demonstrate the behavior, right? They say like fear of flying. What do? You got to get on a plane, right? And you got to confront these kinds of fears. Well, these are all the kinds of things that make up growth, and that's why courage is so important. So let's go to another childhood story. One of my favorites and classics is The Little Engine That Could, right? A little story, about an engine that just, was put to this task of being able to bring a bunch of farm animals and just initially, I can't do it. Can't do it. But then finally, after being told to just start thinking, I think I can. And that's what the little engine would start saying. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, right? There's that affirmation, and she hitched herself up to the little train and she tugged and pulled and tugged slowly, 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 and they started off. Well, faith is made up of our beliefs. And in order to have faith in ourselves, we must learn how to believe in self. Developing the needed self-esteem and self-confidence are the things that you're going to want to work on. They were the first things that I had worked on, right? You've got to be able to believe that. And the story of the little engine that could was a story of, a little engine that didn't believe they could do the work, and then had to affirm themselves and think it and think it. I think I can, right? And then repeat that repeatedly over time. And as we learned with affirmations, they're a powerful tool to develop new beliefs. And so this, along with courage, is the belief that we can do this. We can do this because if we don't, we're going to fall apart and we're going to hit those milestones just like running a marathon, right? They talk about how we hit these walls all along the way, and the body just wants to stop. But we've got to have the courage and the mindset that's able to push beyond that. Well, that's what these affirmations help to do. So that affirmations is a critical part of developing our beliefs that goes along with courage to be able to start making the change. Well, in my own self, I related to this and my life story, is that I had all of those issues up front. And I could relate to the lion. There was no such thing as his courage, and there was no belief in self on that. And so the change came from the time and effort and energy I put into the personal growth stage, initially to create that self-esteem, the confidence in self, the affirmations, and all of those other tools of self-discovery, the workshops, and the books and other things to just constantly feed myself information to support my quest. And again, it's not easy. So let me talk about a case of where I actually was stuck, right? And I needed to make some kind of leap of faith. Well, I was at a point in my life where I was scared, fears were sort of running my life, and I just felt like, I had this aspiration to move forward. I was in my self-discovery phase, and I was really starting to identify the person I wanted to be. But I quickly got back into my routine of work and other things and wasn't really making any strides. And I knew I needed to change. I needed to do something different. And so guess what I did? Well, shown here's what I did, right? And so in this particular case, yep, you're right. I went skydiving, right? I was something I was fearful of, and there was no doubt about it. And so, I made a bold decision. I drove to the airport, and prepared to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. Why would you do that, right? And this was skydiving. It was my first time. And despite this, I was petrified. I pushed myself. I pushed myself. And this is that courage and the belief and the knowing I was that little engine right at that time. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. I pushed myself to take the plunge literally, right? And it was in the training, they had stated that we had to understand the risk. And yes, that by signing the documents, we understood this is that, death was a possible scenario. Well, immediately a couple of people walked out the room. And boy, if that didn't send jitters through all of us, including myself. And again, it was a conviction that had to, it was for, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Well, we got in the plane, we were making our way up to the altitude, and that seemed fun, right? There was a distraction right now to the real feeling of fear underneath. And then we were told to stand up. We're at the altitude, and all of these goosebumps and feelings and butterflies in the stomach. They were probably whatever huge things in his stomach, at that point. They're told to stand up and make preparations for everything that we were taught. We were about to jump out of a perfectly normal plane. As I approached the exit door, we were told not to grab a bar. Guess what I did? I grabbed the bar, right? It was just that fear of having that last minute chance. I do this. He reached up and pushed my arms away, and I did. And inside myself, I just made this heartfelt plea. God, help me, I said, right? And here was this leap of faith. But what followed? Once out there, and initially just feeling, hey, I'm out here now. And it was exhilarating. And it was just, it overwhelmed me. It was just, I looked down at the earth, which seemed so far away. And I just started to enjoy it. And once the chute was deployed and I started to settle in, and I realized I'm not falling to my death here, enjoy the experience. And that is exactly what happened. And I did. I made the landing, and I'll never forget how good it was to feel that ground for the first time. But also, it was the feeling with myself. I did it. I did it. I did it. And that was the most incredible feeling, right? So here was a sense of being able to take risk, right? To get unstuck, so to get myself moving forward again. So I'm not telling you to go jump out of a plane, whatever, and but just to know that we often need to take risks, and they obviously don't need to be that extent. But throughout my life, I did a number of things. I got up and left corporate America to go volunteer overseas. I mean, that was a risk in many other ways, right? It wasn't life-threatening in any way, but it was obviously very different, a huge jump into the unknown. That's a great story, and I'll come back at some point to be able to share that. And a little bit about that actually relates to the saying here, the call, Jennifer James. It's outstanding, and be sure to read it. It's on the website, growhumanpotential.com, just so you have the time to be able to read through it, because this leads to that point in time that I just mentioned. I was in that career, and I was feeling stuck again, right? So later on, zoom past the jumping out of the plane, the skydiving. It was another point of which I reached this point. And fortunately, I had a great mentor. And my mentor, believe it or not, he himself had this massive wake-up call, diagnosed with brain cancer, and given 6 months to live. Well, he resorted to a lot of new techniques and Eastern techniques and things like that to beat it. And he was convinced he was not going to accept it. And hence, guess what? He beat the prognosis. He lived many, many healthy years beyond that, which was incredible. But it was also that gave me that motivation. I was feeling it inside, right? Something was unsettling in me. I knew that there was more growth needed. It wasn't happening as a result of just staying with the job. So what did I do? I got up and I quit, right? Who does that, right? The people who are motivated, right? To be able to do that. Well, it was in that time that I had a chance to go and volunteer all around the world. And I can't even begin to touch on the massive amounts of change. I personally changed from head to toe, from the core of my spirit to my external and my personality in so many ways because of that and those experiences that I had. But that was another case of risk, right? And that's where, I actually have a video and a talk about modern day vision quest is what I call that. And I'll probably bring in pieces of that as we go forward. But it was, as it says here, it was a personal search to discover me. This is that self-discovery phase, along with the venturing into enlightenment to understand the meaning of life. I knew that's what I left. I got to figure things out. That's what I knew. That's where, when I was handed the call and I read through it, I was in tears because, oh my God, I'm not crazy after all. Well, I'll leave that to your view, right? But I knew inside, no, this is the right thing I have to do. And so I did. And that's where, I was supported by a lot of things. Michael Crichton, by the way, famous author, movie maker, had the book Travels. And there was a great quote on there. And that's also listed here. Well worth seeing because in effect, as it said, that's how you grow is you get away from the routine and you go to different places. And that's what I was doing. Well, that's why I really wanted to talk today about this whole essence of change. It's about maintaining it. It's about developing the courage and the belief in self, right? And there's the courage from the lion. Think of that if you need a reminder. And the belief, which is what the little engine needed to be able to say, I could, I think I can, I think I can. We talked about the affirmations last time. These are the kinds of things that really help us. Personal growth, when it's especially dealing with our own issues, can indeed be daunting, right? And so we need all of these elements to really to be able to move forward. It requires a willingness to introspect deeply, right? So you've got to be able to focus on that self-awareness rather than the activity and distractions outside of ourselves that only prevent us from really being able to grow. And that's what's so important, that we learn these elements initially with courage, belief, and the ability to be able to take risks on that. So based on the nature of our issues, which are often deep, it results in significant levels of pain and suffering. For many of us, you remember earlier on, there was the image I portrayed of a woman stomping her fist. It just said, that's it, right? I don't want any more of that pain and suffering. We realize that we have a choice. And again, that segues us to this experience where now we're starting to develop the courage, the belief in self, and the ability to take risks, which is what will launch us forward, literally launch us forward. Two elements are critical, right, to our success in doing this and really becoming our full potential and overcoming these challenges. First is our own motivation, right? And that can often, as I mentioned, come from pain and suffering, and which we don't want anymore. There's some of us may be fortunate to have friends that are willing to be able to support us, but that's be careful of that, right? The people that we often know are used to us being a certain way. So sometimes you do have to start reaching out and start forming new connections, as I did as I was going through my change into personal growth, overcoming my own past and the codependency and everything. So I was in 12-step groups, I was in therapy, counseling, and there I started to make new friends and connections. And what was great is that it was those people that really could relate to me and I could relate to them. And our role became not only our own growth, but being able to encourage and support each other. So sometimes we also have to walk away, not maybe literally, maybe maintain connection, but we have to formulate new connections and friendships with people that are healthy for us, that are going to encourage us to go, right? And if they haven't done it themselves, chances are they don't want us to do that. And that's a fact of life. And so that's where we've got to be able to, with our motivation, be able to start making new connections and start finding new communities or meetups or individuals or resources or therapy groups, whatever the case may be, to be able to start getting acquainted with others that are focusing on inner growth and are familiar with the concept that we've got to make changes, right? The great news, as I mentioned today, is that there's so many methods of support today. I showed that in the tools, that there's some of the common methods. I talk more about these in my book, Discovering Michael, an inspirational guide to personal growth and self-discovery, and I talk particularly about my own use, and I talk about it from the person in a hot seat, me, going through this and some of the things that worked and some of the things that didn't work. And you want to be familiar with those things as you go through the growth as well. Well, something also that you really want to know is that fear is a real thing. Fear is something that holds us back, right? And it's all in our head. The fear of flying, the other things, they may have come from experiences. We formulate this fear, and man, that can stay around forever. I still am dealing with some of the fears that I developed in my early childhood from the trauma and the abuse. And the difference is I have the self-awareness now to recognize those cases. And so sometimes I'll take a fall, but now I know I made a fall and okay, it's time to climb out. So that's the power, right? Because we're still going to be human in all of this, right? It would be nice to be Superman, in these things. In many ways, I really was Superman, but in a literal sense, I'm not going to have everything in order. And just like Superman, he had what, kryptonite? That was his Achilles heel and could set him back. And I think that that's true. We have our issues, which is our kryptonite that we've got to be careful and be aware of. But mostly, it's truly a matter of being able to take charge of your life. If you want it and you want to make the most of it, it's not going to be easy. Right? If it was easy, then we wouldn't feel that sense of glory at the end. For me, as I now have already wrote sort of my epitaph, and it starts with, I did it. I did it. In lieu of my brother committing suicide, I did it. I sustained myself. I did it. Right. And you don't have to go through those extreme circumstances. It's whatever it is that's promoting you and your growth is the feeling at the end of your life, looking back, you realize that those are the things that are most important. I know that from volunteering years in hospice care. So you can do it. That's my biggest words. It's the name of the podcast. If I can do it, and so many others can do it, you can do it too. There's nothing unique, different about me that's different from what you have on the inside. And it's the ability to be able to develop the courage belief systems, to be able to take the risks to get there. The tools are there. That's the easy part, right? They're still difficult to use, challenging, but you can do that. So this is Michael McGinnis. Come back every second and fourth Friday on transformationaltalkradio.com for a podcast, and we'll continue the series. We've got some great guests lined up. I look forward to having you on board. Thank you so much for making the time to be able to be a part of this podcast. Love y'all. I'm Michael McGinnis, and you've been listening to You Can Do It, Inspiring Growth, Igniting Potential. Tune in every second and fourth Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Time on Transformation Talk Radio. As a recognized educator, author, and speaker on human potential, let's learn together how to make the most out of this life and to put a ding in your universe. This is the incredible journey of personal and spiritual growth, self-discovery, and enlightenment. For more information, visit growhumanpotential.com.